All right, we return now with the war in Gaza and the unprecedented peril that journalists face working on the ground. More than 100 reporters have been killed in Gaza, according to the International Federation of Journalists. In addition to the danger, the media is facing crackdowns. Over the weekend, Israeli Defense Forces shut down the Al Jazeera offices in the nearby West Bank, accusing the Qatari-owned broadcaster of inciting terror. Now, in the third part of a months-long investigative series, Hala Gorani has this in-depth report on the journalists caught in the crossfire. As the current fighting between Israel and Lebanon escalates, our reporting begins with an Israeli bombing on the border a year ago. And a warning, some of the material is disturbing.
A group of journalists says it finds itself under attack in southern Lebanon.
What happened? Okay? What happened? What happened?
2 rounds of tank shells fired from an Israeli position across the border. October 13th, 2023, a day colleagues Christina Asi and Dylan Collins will never forget.
We were covering for around 50 minutes before we were attacked the first time. I immediately lost sensation in my legs, so I started screaming for help, and then seconds later we were attacked again.
Asi lost her right leg. Dylan Collins also injured. Reuters journalist Issam Abdullah was killed in the same strike. Why are so many journalists dying, covering the wars in Gaza and Lebanon? Since October 7th, at least 116 journalists have been killed and dozens more injured. 53 are in detention. The deadliest conflict for journalists since the Committee to Protect Journalists began records. Nearly all of them Palestinian. 2 were Israeli, killed in the Hamas attack on October 7th. At the time of the strike on journalists in southern Lebanon, the IDF denied targeting the group.
We've had extensive exchanges in that area between Hezbollah and our forces. We do not target journalists, not by any stretch of the imagination.
But for Dylan Collins, who says the journalists were visible to the Israeli military before the strikes, that explanation doesn't make sense.
It was 2 strikes, 37 seconds apart from the same direction. It's a sustained targeted attack against a group of journalists that I think was clearly intended not just to scare people away, not just to kill one person, but to kill all of us.
For this 3-month-long investigation, NBC News has spoken to 21 media professionals and organizations in Israel, Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, and Egypt, who all describe killings, arrests, and attacks on their profession. Journalist Noor Harazin left Gaza for Cairo in April. After sending her children to live abroad,
this is Noor Harazin from Gaza.
She spent months reporting on the war, losing friends and colleagues. Does she think they were hit intentionally?
No one is safe in Gaza. No one is safe. It does not matter if you are a man, a woman, a child, if you are a militant fighter or if you are a civilian, if you are a doctor, a journalist. As long as you are in Gaza, you could get killed. You are targeted.
But despite being safe and out of Gaza,
I do not feel that I belong here. And to be truthful, I can't say that I'm
happy?
Yeah. I'm not happy.
But at least your children are safe. Yeah?
My children are safe. My family are safe.
Among the journalists killed by Israel in Gaza, Al Jazeera's Ismail Al-Ghul and his colleague Rami Al-Rafi. A direct hit on their car on July 31st on assignment.
We do everything. We wear our press jackets, we wear our helmets.
Their colleague Hind Al-Qudri breaking down on air, announcing the deaths. The Israeli military says Al-Ghul was a Hamas terrorist and even took part in the October 7th massacre. putting out a document that lists him as an operative as far back as 2007, when he would have been only 10 years old.
Often initially they deny having killed the individual at all. Then they will accuse the journalist of having either been a terrorist or engaged in militant activity.
But the Committee to Protect Journalists has called his death murder, accusing Israel of a smear campaign. The group's chief executive, Jody Ginsburg.
He had actually been arrested in the Al-Shifa hospital raids back in March. So if Israel believed him to be a terrorist, I think we have to ask why he wasn't detained and held at that point.
In a statement to NBC News, the IDF says it has never and will never deliberately target journalists. Since October 7th, at least 4 Al Jazeera journalists and their families have died in attacks by the Israeli military. In the network's offices in the occupied West Bank, pictures of reporters killed on the job are everywhere. Bureau Chief Walid al-Omari says Israel's accusations that his employees are linked to Hamas are baseless, that Israel has allowed several of his correspondents to leave Gaza since October 7th, one of them badly injured.
How it's coming? If he was from Hamas as they in their accusations.
So you're saying if he was a Hamas member, the Israelis would never let him leave?
Of course.
Beyond the deaths and arrests, Gaza has been impossible to cover on the ground for international and Israeli journalists. Access to the battlefield blocked. By all accounts, unprecedented in war coverage.
This letter sent to both the Israeli and Egyptian governments requesting access into Gaza was signed by more than 50 journalists, including myself, NBC's Richard Engel, and Sky News. It reads in part, we urge the governments to allow free and unfettered access to Gaza for all foreign media. But apart from rare military embeds, only one international journalist has been allowed into the besieged enclave since October 7th on a very brief visit.
But the Israeli government doesn't see it that way.
This has been one of the most reported conflicts ever.
But not freely by the international media. The international media, Sky News, are only allowed in accompanied by Israel on very, very limited trips.
It is a very dangerous war zone for the safety of these journalists, but we're keeping them out.
We asked the IDF when foreign journalists would be allowed in, but it did not respond to our question. Back in Cairo, we head to the new home of veteran Agence France Presse correspondent Adel Zanoun. He left Gaza in April with his family.
Why Israel target the journalists? Israel don't want to see independent journalists, independent media, independent press to cover the war. I think this is...
Why not?
For Israel, there is no red line.
Inside Gaza, there are those who've decided to stay. Noor Swirki is one of them, living in a tent a few yards from her live position at a nearby hospital.
I call it Noor Villa, a displaced Gazan woman, mother, and journalist.
She says the Israeli military is going after media workers. We spoke to her via Zoom.
And what makes you say that?
Because too many of our colleagues have been targeting while they were in duty. Yeah, they were making their job and they were targeted.
For Christina Asi, it's been a long road to recovery. Months of therapy and pain. She carried the Olympic torch through the streets of Paris this summer, pushed by her colleague Dylan. She says that when she's better, she'll get back to work. Hala Gorani, NBC News, Jerusalem.
And we thank Hala and her team for their reporting, and of course, all of the journalists who are risking their lives to share those stories.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.